All right. So, was there a particular game that you wanted to highlight, or?
I had a lot of really interesting games in this tournament. Felt uh I felt there was a lot of cool ones, but here I'll post one in like the bot spam channel of the Discord
Okay.
in case you want to show it.
Yeah, sure.
This was in my very first series, so it was one that I assume wasn't streamed. Um, versus McFly. It was a it was a really interesting set just because there's a lot of high power stuff going on in it. Like it had the notorious Zatron Tatsu, but then it had Ebb, Antima, and Windsor, so you couldn't just do a straight Zatron Tatsu line because you'd run into a giant burst of damage with the Antima, Windsor, and Ebb all lined up. So it was just a really like a set where you kind of just had to posture to be able to do a lot of things, which I always like that type. So I was player one, and I went for a natural blast forge into like Ebb conduit in order to threat
Okay.
anything, and then uh, he went for a Zatron, and the Animus to set up to set up. I went for a Windsor setup, and then he threatens the counter Antima setup so that my Windsor can't be good. And then I did the pivot into Antima Tatsu, which is something that you don't see very often. Like I bought a Tatsu on the turn that I bought Engineers.
Yeah.
Um, and then like the game was really, it just turned into like a grindy game from there where I had like a huge engineer pile and wasn't absorbing, but was up Tatsus, and the opponent had Zatron and like more tempo on defense, but was down, or not more tempo on defense, but like more absorb.
And you were purposefully
But
not absorbing because that way the Tatsu didn't get very much value, or?
it was just like I could buy a wall for one absorb at first, but it's sort of not that great because it's just going to be denied for a while. And I didn't need like soak tempo, so the only reason to buy defenders is to absorb.
Right.
So I just wanted to focus on getting as much damage as possible. And I do later in the game I end up
Yeah, I see
being
that
able to
here.
absorb. But it's like once I'm done with Tatsus. And then I
Right.
have all these ebbs, which sort of Mr. Guy once famously said ebb means you can do anything you want, and that was pretty true in this game.
Okay. So keeping up
So I
your flexibility was really important early on of which line to go.
yeah, I really like sets like that. There's just like so much going on in this where, if someone doesn't end up going Tatsu, you can get Matrix against them. Uh, and like if someone doesn't end up going Zatron, you might get like Windsor and Antima. Um, so there's just like so many cool threats, and it's rare to see Zatron like truly get countered, you know?
Yeah.
Where like it's pretty rare for the player with no Zatron to find a way to win. So I like that. But really, I had a lot of cool sets in this tournament. And that one to me set the tone. Um,
Yeah.
and
It looks like McFly's asking in the chat, did you throw by skipping the Tatsu? Or
oh,
did he throw?
I don't think so, but I don't know. Like I felt like I don't know if it's a throw because I thought I was winning either way. But yeah, instead of his third Tatsu, um, there's double Rhino ossified instead. I don't know how much work that Tatsu was doing. But I felt I was pretty ahead as long as I could keep Zatron frozen and like keep enough pressure that it wasn't clicking. Because I just had a lot of Gauss cannons and oxides there. So I don't know. It would take like, since the game lasts so many turns, it would be hard to analyze because there's still a lot of decisions after that. But I definitely liked my position there. I didn't feel worried.
Yeah. It's good to have some
Um,
early games like that where you feel comfortable to sort of set the tone for the whole tournament, huh?
yeah, it was like Yeah. Sometimes you get some like weird early games, and then you just, I don't know, get into like the wrong mindset
Right. But you got
and lose.
a set with units that made it like a set type that you really enjoy playing. So that's kind of the best case scenario, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it sort of like made me think a lot about, it kind of was like the type of set where back when 307th was writing his like set reading Saturdays, it was like, he would, he claims to have just rolled a random set and gone with it every time, but he'd always have these like really interesting like counters in it. So you really had to think about it for a while in the opening, and that kind
Yeah.
of gets me in the mindset where I'm actually going to think about my plays throughout the tournament, which is a good thing to do.
Right. I know there was one where didn't you play 307th for one of his and came up with a line that he didn't even think about? I feel like there was one set reading
Yeah,
Saturday. So it's
yeah, I think
cool
it's
to
the
have
last one.
sets like that where you can analyze it and come up with two or three different lines, and then there's a fourth line that also is viable and
Yeah,
may even be the best one. So there's a lot of options.
yeah. Um, and yeah, there was I thought it was a really good tournament overall for me. Um,
Hey, you certainly
I had
played well. Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. Yeah, much better than last time. I think the Saturday times work better for me because it's like it's
Yeah,
not right after a work day.
totally. Um, yeah. Was there another game you wanted to look at, or?
Sure. There were a couple other ones. Maybe I'll put another code into
Sure.
the Discord channel. So this was in my second series versus Flop Flop, and I think this was game 3, so I had to win it. And it's a interesting set because there's two completely different strategies that both just have a lot of, or at least a pretty decent amount of support for them, and kind of counter each other in like certain aspects of them counter each other. So the set was on one side it had Steelforge, Deadeye Operative, Drake, Defense Grid, Thunderhead, which forms a really good defensive strategy with Deadeye, with the Absorb. And then on the other side you have Scorchilla, Cluster Bolt, and possibly Valkyrian with more of an Absorb Denial strat. But Scorchilla, can have problems against Deadeye because by the time Scorchilla is ready firing, like the Deadeye bodies are there for extra defense,
Right.
and Drake can pressure it a lot. So I decided to go with the Deadeyes in this set. Partly as there's a nice like third NG P1 opening into the double blast forge, and then as needed later. And then he decided to go for the Scorchilla absorb denial like counter strategy. So this one was more interesting just in a like strategic sense, and I thought the idea behind defense grid that I know is gonna get absorbed tonight a lot, but it's good for me to buy it anyways, just for the tempo and so that I can kind
Right.
of set up a good offense behind it. And then like there's also the decision of how many dead eyes to go. Like I decided to go for 2 and then move into Drake's, but I could have tried getting more dead eyes from there. But I think I need to counterattack.
To force your opponent to have to buy some defense, or?
Yeah, and kind of like if I put him on the defensive, it'll be harder for him to have the big cluster turns later.
Right.
And so I'm really like, and I'm also way ahead in resources because of the dead eyes. So I want to do a lot of resource trading just to like strain the economy even more and stop him from ever getting a Valkyrian added. And so I end up clicking my Drake a lot. And just kind of cycling on that just like one Drake and a few splitters, but a whole bunch of economy, just resource trading on that, and then setting up the nice Thunderhead to time perfectly into a second Scorchilla Blast just for even more tempo.
Right.
So I was able to connect all of the units that I thought made the big econ strategy work. So I really liked that. Even though like you sort of think of Scorchillas and clusters as being a counter strategy to a defense grid, I just had much more support and was able to use all of it well enough. But this one was one where I was like kind of worried, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh, am I just gonna kind of get boomed by these Scorchillas?
But you were able to just barely defend. Or maybe not
Yeah,
even just barely, but you were able to defend without like really costing much. You had to force field a little bit, but that's pretty okay because you're up econ as you said. So
yeah, and I'm buying a lot of steel splitters just like in case there's sort of a bigger burst and I'm prepared for. I have splitters to hold.
and buying
Just
the
because it
steel
doesn't actually.
splitters off of Steelforge makes them pretty like or a lot better to hold back on defense, I guess, right?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the decision of holding back, it doesn't matter where you got them, but like if what you want is defensive splitters, like Steelforge is a pretty dang good way of making them.
Right.
And yeah, I just liked this game because it was a highly asymmetric game where we both used like almost the entire set got used here. I guess in the end, no Corpuses or Valkyrians were bought, but other than that,
Yeah. If your opponent had the time or the ability to defend, they would have tried to get a Valk out, I'm sure.
yeah. Or if you could have like moved into a defense grid at some point, maybe stop on like 8 Scorchillas and move into D grid somehow, like that could have been scary because my whole attack setup was like 5 permanent damage, so
Right.
you really don't want to be facing down a D grid with that.
Yeah, definitely.
But the Deadeyes kind of
Prevented
helped
that
take that
from
off the
happening.
table.
Yeah. Cool. Well, congratulations again. Thanks for playing.
Thank you.
And I'll be sending your prize codes as soon as Elliot generates them for me. I guess one last thing though about what you were saying just a minute ago is like these set readings at the beginning. I guess we saw a couple of those that seemed pretty good. I know your Trump Wall games weren't the most interesting. They were pretty quick and didn't have a ton of like big decisions, but there was one in particular I remember we were casting it and it was like pretty obviously a green set, but you were P1 and so you went high econ even though maybe it wasn't necessarily a high econ set, but you just had a line that fit a lot better to like go like third NG into conduit first and sort of work from there to try to like you needed to get green out first, but you didn't want to be cutting drones and be behind econ so much. Or
Wait, the Dynamo one?
was it, or maybe it was a deep launch game? I don't know. I don't have your replay codes, unfortunately. I wish I could see like replays from the tournament, but there was one set.
You're thinking of the second D Belange, with the one where I got a bunch of Asteries and Zatron?
Yeah, it might have been that one. I think so. That one was interesting.
Yeah, I can post the code.
I'll have to look back through to see it. But...
Code. Yeah, that one was a really interesting set. The one with the Fuge and the Vi.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're thinking of?
I think so.
Yeah, when I went third NG, I was kind of thinking about what happens if he mirrors it. And I was thinking my go-to strat in that case would be a Fuge into just a Bombarder and otherwise still on the green stuff with Zatron and Asteries and like possibly Mahar. But Fuge into Bombarder should just be like generically pretty good.
Yeah.
But then he skipped third NG, and the whole idea behind third NG was that it's like a Zatron Asteri set, so econ is good. And so when he skipped third NG, I thought, I don't really have the time to make all of these dreams happen. I'm just going to focus purely on Zatron Asteri, knowing that he can go for a like high freeze breach strat, which is what he ended up going for, but
Right.
my units are pretty breach proof, so I can just be allowing little breaches or not worrying too much about absorbing versus that freeze, and just have the such good value you get off of Asteri cannons to win. And that is sort of how it worked out.
Right. Yeah. No, it ended up working quite well. There was like the interesting sort of like the first turn where you click Zatron, which actually denies a bunch of the freeze value since he's not going to be able to breach for enough to kill anything. That's
Yeah.
important. And then later, sort of forcing these Nevo charges to be bought in order to deny Zatron value, but it just seemed to keep working out. Like, I was worried that you might get a little bit under drone to be able to pump out the rest of the Asteries, but you found ways to sort of work it in to have 16 and 4 green a turn.
Yeah.
Which was really nice.
Yeah, I focused a lot on like floating the right amount of gold to make it happen. And then there was a lot of Asteri clicks that helped it happen, and then that one rectifier hold worked out really well. I wasn't planning on that rectifier hold, I don't think, but then I kind of saw it when he threw down that turn, and then it was pretty over from there.
Yeah, I guess the other thing was I was surprised by the Asteri clicks at first because I thought, oh, against all this freeze, I guess you'll kind of go breach proof, maybe, but there's no breach proof drone, so I was like, huh, this is like it seems. I was worried a little, I guess, but then it looked like the clicks and Zatron, like each turn you were able to get out the defense that you needed because your opponent didn't have a lot of real damage, and I guess it just worked out in the end.
Yeah, and I got that fifth conduit kind of thinking I'm going to buy a lot of force fields this game, so even though I'm sort of just need 4 green per turn, I'll buy a fifth. And it was also partly there to play around like any kinetic driver stuff that could happen.
I was gonna
but
say, when you bought it on that turn that the Connect driver was coming in, yeah, I was wondering if you were thinking about using 5 green or just sort of ensuring that you had 4 green that you needed in case the Connect click killed it.
It was kind of both. But I definitely, like, when I bought those Asteries, I was not imagining I would take them all the way down to 4 health.
Yeah.
But it's just like each time I did, the decision like on that turn was I can keep this Asteria at 7, or I can put it to 4 and have a way better turn. So
yeah,
I
so
just
then
went for
it happened to make sense each turn. But yeah, so I guess that's good to hear, reassuring to hear. Like you didn't, when you bought them, you weren't expecting to click them all the way down that much, but then it just kept sort of working out.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, cool. Like if it's on 4, you can still allow breaches for 3, and not be too worried about it, which is pretty reasonable. I definitely wouldn't want to click it down to 1, so I was getting a lot out of that, because then suddenly you can't allow any breaches and they just buy like 3 Nevos and you have problems.
Right. Cool. Yeah, that was a really interesting game as well. Because looking at the set initially, I was like, wow, you really want green here, but Centrifuge actually gets good value because Bombarder makes it really easy to spend the tech. So
yeah.
And I was wondering if Vi would even come out at all. And
yeah, I think like the main thing that Vi is doing really well is making it so that Mahar Rectifier is a lot weaker, because in a set like that without the Vi in it, you're thinking, oh, I want to get 1 Mahar, and then anytime my opponent doesn't Nevo, I alternate to absorbing on the Mahar and let Zatron grow higher health.
Right.
And then that forces your opponent to buy a lot of Nevos that might otherwise be bad. Like you put your Zatron on 6, and then their Nevo's like freezing a force field.
Right.
And your Mahar just attacks. So Vi kind of denied that type of tactic, but and it also enabled the like Vi plus Nevo, but I think his damage was just too low to fully capitalize on the Vi Nevo plays because I'm able to click Zatron and force field out those, and then my Zatron's still getting pretty good value.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess that's it here. It's about 5, so I think I'm gonna end things for the tournament at least. But yeah, congratulations again, and thanks for going through some games.
Yeah, my pleasure.